Good morning. Good morning. If I could have your attention. Again, thank you all so much for being here this morning. We really appreciate the turnout today. It looks wonderful to see you beautiful people in the room this morning. I know it's an early event, and we're always so pleased that people make the effort to show up and to experience this together in community. So again, thank you. My name is Kevin Stroder. I'm the director of ALA's Office for Diversity, Literacy, and Outreach Services, and I support the steering committee that has made it 25 years of this awesome experience. So let's give a round of applause for that. On this January morning in Baltimore, Maryland, we gather to celebrate the 25th annual of the MLK celebration and the 95th birthday of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. The topic that resonates with me all too well, given the societal issues we witness today, is Dr. King's focus on the three evils of society presented in his 1967 address at the National Conference on New Politics. In this address, he links racism, materialism, and war as America's enduring challenges to that day and how they remain challenges today in the 21st century. Dr. King opened his address by saying, "We have come here because we share a common concern for the moral health of our nation. We have come because our eyes have seen through the superficial glory and glitter of our society and observed the coming of judgment. Like the prophet of old, we have read the handwriting on the wall. We have seen our nation weighed in the balance of history and found wanting. We have come because we see this as a dark hour in the affairs of men." I would like to open here with a song of the African American National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing, which will be presented virtually by the a cappella rendition committed students of Oakwood University Department of Communications. Please stand.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies resound. Rolling sea, sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. March on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod to the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn has died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place from which our fathers died. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughter, out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of my star is cast. from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk of the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand. True to our God, true to our God, true to our native land, true to our native land.
Thank you. You may be seated. As we uplift the words of Dr. King today, driven by the voices of our ALA community, I invite you to lean into reflection this morning and hold true to your own personal mission towards the holistic restoration of all people. I now would like to invite Emily Drabinski, ALA President, to begin our readings.
For most of us, this is a new mood. We are traditionally the idealists. We are the marchers from Mississippi and Selma and Washington who staked our lives on the American dream during the first half of this decade. We were the hardcore activists who were willing to believe that Southerners could be reconstructed in the constitutional image. We were the dreamers of a dream that dark yesterdays of man's inhumanity to man would soon be transformed into bright tomorrows of justice.
Now it's hard to escape the disillusionment and betrayal. Our hopes have been blasted and our dreams have been shattered. The promise of a great society was shipwrecked off the coast of Asia on a poor, dreadful peninsula in Vietnam. The poor, black and white, are still perishing on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. What happens to a dream deferred? It leads to bewildering frustration and corroding bitterness.
I came here to see this in a personal experience here in Chicago last summer. In all the speaking that I've done in the United States before varied audiences, including some hostile whites, the only time I was ever booed was one night in our regular weekly mass meeting by some angry young men of our movement. I had preached to them about my dream. I had lectured to them about the not too distant day when they would have freedom.
I had urged them to have faith in America and in white society. Their hopes had soared. They were now booing me because they felt that we were unable to deliver on our promises. They were booing because we had urged them to have faith in people who had too often proved to be unfaithful. They were now hostile because they were watching the dream that they had so readily accepted turn into a frustrating nightmare.
This situation is all the more ominous in the view of the rising expectations of men the world over. The deep rumblings that we hear today, the rumblings of discontent, is the thunder of the disinherited masses rising from the dungeons of oppression to the bright hills of freedom. All over the world, like a fever, freedom is spreading in the widest liberation movement in history. The great masses of people are determined to end the exploitation of their races and the lands. And in one majestic chorus, they are singing in the words of our freedom song, "Ain't gonna let nobody turn us around.
And so the collision course is set. The people cry for freedom, and the Congress attempts to legislate repression. Millions, yes, billions, are appropriated for mass murder, but the most meager pittance of foreign aid for international development is crushed in the surge of reaction. Unemployment rages at a major depression level in the Black ghettos, but the bipartisan response is an anti-riot bill rather than a serious poverty program. The modest proposals for model cities, rent supplement, and rat control, pitiful as they were to begin with, get caught in the maze of congressional inaction. And I submit to you tonight that a Congress that proves to be more anti-Negro than anti-rat needs to be dismissed.
It seems our legislative assemblies have adopted Nero as their patron saint and are bent on fiddling while our cities burn. Even when the people persist in the face of great obstacles, develop indigenous leadership and self-help approaches to their problems, and finally tread the forest of bureaucracy to obtain existing government funds, the corrupt political order seeks to crush even this beginning of hope.
Yes, the hour is dark. Evil comes forth in the guise of good. It is a time of double talk when men in high places have a high blood pressure of deceptive rhetoric and an anemia of concrete performance. We cry out against welfare handouts to the poor, but generously approve an oil depletion allowance to make the rich richer. 6 Mississippi plantations receive more than $1 million a year, not to plant cotton, but no provision is made to feed the tenant farmer who is put out of work by the government subsidy.
The crowning achievement in hypocrisy must go to those staunch Republicans and Democrats of the Midwest and West who were given land by our government when they came here as immigrants from Europe. They were given education through the land-grant colleges. They were provided with agricultural agents to keep them abreast of farming trends.
They were granted low-interest loans to aid in the mechanization of their farms. And now that they have succeeded in becoming successful, they are paid not to farm. And these are the same people that now say to Black people whose ancestors were brought to this country in chains and who were emancipated in 1863 without being given land to cultivate or bread to eat, that they must pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. What they truly advocate is socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor.
I wish I could say that this is a passing phase in the cycles of our nation's life. Certainly times of war, times of reaction throughout the society, but I suspect that we are now experiencing the coming to the surface of a triple sickness that has been lurking within our body politic from its very beginning. That is the sickness of racism, excessive materialism, and militarism. Not only is this our nation's dilemma, it is the plague of the Western civilization.
As early as 1906, W.E.B. Du Bois prophesied that the problem of the 20th century would be the problem of the color line. Now, as we stand 2/3 into this crucial period in history, we know full well that racism is still the hound of hell which dogs the tracks of our civilization. Ever since the birth of our nation, white America has had a schizophrenic personality on the question of race. She has been torn between two selves, a self in which she proudly professes the great principle of democracy, and a self in which she madly practices the antithesis of democracy.
This tragic duality has provided a strange indecisiveness and ambivalence towards the Negro, causing America to take a step backwards simultaneously with every step forward on the question of racial justice. To be at once attracted to the Negro and repelled by him, to love and to hate him. There has never been a solid, unified, determined thrust to make justice a reality for African Americans.
The step backwards has a new name today. It is called the white backlash, but the white backlash is nothing new. It is the surfacing of old prejudices, hostilities, and ambivalences that have always been there. It was caused neither by the cry of Black Power nor by the unfortunate recent wave of riots in our cities. The white backlash of today is rooted in the same problem that has characterized America ever since the black man landed in chains on the shores of this nation.
This does not imply that all white Americans are racist. Far from it. Many white people have, through a deep moral compulsion, fought long and hard for racial justice, nor does it mean that America has made no progress in her attempt to cure the body politic of the disease of racism, or that the dogma of racism has not been considerably modified in recent years. However, for the good of America, it is necessary to refute the idea that the dominant ideology in our country, even today, is freedom and equality. White racism is just an occasional departure from the norm on the part of a few bigoted extremists.
Thank you all for those words. Now, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker. Mr. David Delmar Cintillas, author of What We Build with Power, The Fight for Economic Justice in Tech, Beacon Press 2023, is the founder and former executive director of Resilient Coders, a highly competitive, free and stipend, nonprofit coding boot camp that trains people of color from low-income backgrounds for high-growth careers as software engineers. Resilient Coders was recognized by the White House in 2016. David is especially proud of having been recognized by El Planeta as an influential member of Boston's Latinx community. I would like to welcome David.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you to everybody who's here, who's gotten up this early to be a part of this celebration. It's an honor for me. I'm really honored to be here. I'm especially honored to be celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King this year in 2024. Year of a presidential election that feels in some ways like a referendum on the soul of our nation. It feels like an existential contest, not just between democracy and anti-democracy, or between tolerance and hate, or any of the other sound bites that get tossed around quite a bit. Rather, it is a contest between two complete and mutually conflicting visions of what it is that this country actually stands for. It was suggested to me when I was invited to join you all that I reflect on this wonderful speech. As you all know, it's a speech he delivers later in his short life, in 1967, once he's begun really centering matters of economic justice in the pursuit of liberation. It's a speech in which he explicitly calls out an ineffectual or disinterested Congress. Now, you've already heard this quote this morning, but it bears repeating. Unemployment rages at a major depression level in the black ghettos, but the bipartisan response is an anti-riot bill rather than a serious poverty program. It's a speech in which he directly addresses our national propensity to make myths that justify, validate, and even celebrate our existing oppressive hierarchies of race and class, such as this myth that white folks in this country have pulled themselves up by the bootstraps, where black folks have been either unwilling or unable. This is the speech from which we get that famous line that, again, bears repeating. What they truly advocate is socialism for the rich and capitalism for the poor. Oh, what better point of reflection for 2024? I'm a little embarrassed to admit to you all that in my efforts to prepare today's speech, I really tried hard to find some way to steer clear of politics. I really did. But I meditated on this, and if I do steer clear of politics, I'm not really reflecting on this speech, am I? And I'm certainly not inviting Dr. King into our own time and space this morning. I ultimately decided that if I did steer clear of politics, I would be failing to honor his legacy. I felt I would be reducing Dr. King to the version of him that we teach our children in school. I would be perpetuating this myth of Dr. King that most Americans believe in today, the great unifier representing a set of values that may have been controversial back in the medieval 1960s, but today are universal in our age of enlightenment. I would be allowing what Dr. King calls, quote, patronizing Democrats to cling on to the myth that the answer to our disunity is unity at all costs, for which the Latin is status quo. I've often wondered how so many Americans, people I know and love, can advocate for the continued oppression and exploitation of the poor and the policies and politicians that they support, and then, come January, speak on the legacy of Dr. King as though they agreed with it, honoring in words what they would dismantle in action. This is the work of American myth-making. When the message is too strong, folks, we cut it with milk and sugar. I grew up with American myth-making, as I suspect many of you did as well. I was served Dr. King light, cut with milk and sugar. The warrior for voting rights who marched on Washington and whose struggle ultimately culminated in the signing of the 1965 Civil Rights Act. Seen. Nobody told me Dr. King was a proponent of rent control. Nobody told me he was assassinated while he was supporting striking workers who wanted better pay and better working conditions. Nobody told me in school about any Poor People's Campaign. And can you imagine the phone calls from parents across this country if they had? Nobody wants to feel like they've been cast in opposition to the great Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so we ignore those positions that we disagree with, that were controversial then, and yes, remain controversial today. And of course, if we strip Dr. King of his controversiality, what exactly is it that we have left? Now, meanwhile, we excuse ourselves from the hard work of introspection. And without introspection, of course, there can be no progress. So we go about weaving our mythologies. We tell ourselves that we all carry the torch of liberation. It's an opiate that we swallow to keep safe from our own clarity. I'm lucky. I grew up with the antidote to American mythology. My parents immigrated to this country from Mexico. They have a deep consciousness of all of our cultures to tell stories. I'll never forget the day that I came home from school and I told my parents, I learned about the Mexican-American War. And they said, what Mexican-American War? Well, you know, started with the poor Texans who were trying to fight for freedom and liberation, and then America kind of jumped in the fight. And then at the end of it, they purchased half of Mexico's landmass. And my parents did for me then what school had so far been unable to do, which is to instruct me, to challenge, and really explore everything that I'm learning in school. It was 1848. Southern senators wanted more Southern senators to tip the balance of power in Congress, for which they would need more Southern states, for which they would need more Southern soil. History is not a series of isolated vignettes, the way I learned about it. There is no historical event or person or thought or war that exists in isolation. It's a product of its moment. There is no such thing as a new dawn. Every challenge is a result of yesterday's decisions. Every triumph is earned with blood, sweat, and tears. 1967 Dr. King would have been witnessing what he calls, quote, the white backlash. What today, in retrospect, we call the Great Southern Strategy, the GOP's concerted efforts to stir up racial animus in order to poach white Southerners away from the Democratic Party. He would have seen his nation still beset by its original sin, unwilling and unable to confront its consequences, still woven into the fabric of everyday American life. In our schools, in our streets, in our hospitals, in our prisons. He would have been met with an increasingly authoritarian Republican Party, experimenting with white ethno-nationalist rhetoric and finding that it lands well in America like rain over the prairie. Dr. King had an incredibly important asset in his campaigns: the people who showed up. The folks who suffered the dogs and the fire hoses one day and were back the next, taller and louder than they had been the day before, defending with their bodies their rights and the rights of their kin. Imagine the sight. Imagine how beautiful that resistance, or that militancy, to use Dr. King's word. Folks, I was raised Catholic. To me, love is service. Don't tell me that you love your brother and let him go hungry. Don't tell me about your values if you are not prepared to fight for them, or better yet, serve for them. Don't tell me that you reject white ethno-nationalism if you are doing nothing to stop its continued, lingering presence in our culture, its incursion into our democratic institutions. In honor of Dr. King, I humbly ask that you show up this year. And I'm not just talking about voting. Your neighborhood has a political advocacy coalition. Find it. Show up. Bring friends. Serve. Sweep the floors if the floors need sweeping. Please do not find yourself telling your grandchildren that when America most needed her defenders, you were home, sending prayers. We may not have Dr. King with us anymore. But I would say that Dr. King is not who we need here with us today. We need those people who show up. We need the doers, the restless, the relentlessly optimistic who still believe in an America in which we all belong and who will not let it be taken from them. That's who we need. We need you. We don't have to imagine what Dr. King would have said in this moment because he said it. If America does not respond creatively to the challenge to banish racism, some future historian will have to say that a great civilization died because it lacked the soul and commitment to make justice a reality for all men. Thank you so much.
Racism can well be that coercive evil that will bring down the curtain of Western civilization. Arnold Toynbee has said that some 26 civilizations have risen upon the face of the earth. Almost all of them have descended into junk heap of destruction. The decline and the fall of civilizations, according to Toynbee, was not caused by external invasion, but by internal decay. They failed to respond creatively to the challenges impingent upon them.
If America does not respond creatively to the challenge to banish racism, some future historian will have to say that a great civilization died because it lacked the soul and commitment to make justice a reality for all men.
The second aspect of our afflicted society is extreme materialism. With the multiplying of your machinery, whatever you have, you want more, and wherever you are, you want to go somewhere else. Your devices are neither time-saving nor soul-saving machinery. They are so many sharp spurs which urge you on to invent more machinery and to do more business.
This tells us something about our civilization. We cannot escape the indictment. This does not mean that we must turn back the clock of scientific progress. No one can overlook the wonders that science has wrought for our lives. The automobile will not abdicate in favor of the horse and buggy, or the train in favor of the stagecoach, or the tractor in favor of the hand plow, or the scientific method in favor of ignorance and superstition. But our moral lag must be redeemed. When scientific power outruns moral power, we end up with guided missiles and misguided men. When we foolishly maximize the minimum and minimize the maximum, we sign the warrant for our own day of doom. It is this moral lag in our thing-oriented society that blinds us to the human reality around us and encourages us in the greed and exploitation which creates the sector of poverty in the midst of wealth.
Again, we have deluded ourselves into believing the myth that capitalism grew and prospered out of the Protestant ethic of hard work and sacrifice. The fact is that capitalism was built on the exploitation and suffering of Black slaves and continues to thrive on the exploitation of the poor, both Black and white, both here and abroad. If Negroes and poor whites do not participate in the free flow of wealth within our country, they will forever be poor, giving their energies, their talents, and their limited funds to the consumer market, but reaping few benefits and services in return.
The way to end poverty is to end the exploitation of the poor, ensure them a fair share of the government services and the nation's resources. I proposed recently that a national agency be established to provide employment for everyone needing it. Nothing is more socially inexcusable than unemployment in this age. In the 30s, when the nation was bankrupt, it instituted such an agency, the WPA. I'm convinced that even this one massive act of concern will do more than all the state police and armies of the nation to quell riots and still hatreds.
The tragedy is our materialistic culture does not possess the statesmanship necessary to do it. Victor Hugo could have been thinking of 20th century America when he wrote, "There's always more misery among the lower class than there is humanity of the higher class." The time has come for America to face the inevitable choice between materialism and humanism.
We must devote at least as much to our children's education and the health of the poor as we do to the care of our automobiles and the building of beautiful, impressive hotels. We must also realize that the problems of racial injustice and economic injustice cannot be solved without radical redistribution of political and economic power.
The final phase of our national sickness is the disease of militarism,
Nothing more clearly demonstrates our nation's abuse of military power than our tragic adventure in Vietnam. It has frustrated our development at home. It has greatly contributed to the forces of reaction in America.
And it has practically destroyed Vietnam and left thousands of Americans and Vietnamese youth maimed and mutilated. We are arrogant in professing to be concerned about the freedom of foreign nations while not setting our own house in order. Men of reason should no longer debate the merits of war or the means of financing war. They should end the war and restore sanity and humanity to the American policy. And if the will of the peoples continues to be unheeded, the American people must have the opportunity to vote into oblivion those who cannot detach themselves from militarism and those that lead us.
And now it is, excuse me, and now it is my great honor to welcome our call to action speaker, Dr. Claudette McLean, Executive Director of the Center for the Study of Multicultural Children's Literature and the 2023 recipient of the Coretta Scott King Virginia Hamilton Award for Lifetime Achievement. Please welcome Dr. McLean.
I feel good. How you feel? How you feel? All right. It's a blessing to be here this morning. It's a blessing to wake up this morning. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you for your beautiful keynote speak. It is so wonderful to be with my library friends, and I can feel the love in this room. Can't you feel it? Before I begin, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the library workers, the librarians, the directors and supporters across this country who have defended the freedoms of our democracy and worked tirelessly to ensure that everyone has equal access to books, resources, materials, and programs. You are champions. Special thanks to the American Library Association, Social Responsibility Roundtable, and the Martin Luther King Holiday Planning Committee for inviting me to deliver the call to action keynote address. Thank you to co-chairs LaJuan Pringle and Andrew Sako Jackson, and thank you to Kevin Strouder. Kevin Strouder, Director of the Office for Diversity, Library, and Outreach Services, for our many correspondences who kept me on my toes. Give all of them a hand. I am honored to stand before you to be a part of this great profession. I stand on the shoulders of past library leaders and the ancestors. In preparation for today's speech, I was asked to listen to Dr. King's speech titled, "The Three Evils of Society." Dr. King's speech was given in August of 1967, 2 months prior to Dr. King's speech. During June and July of 1967, 150 riots erupted across the United States. Listening again to the speech, I was reminded of August 1967, when I was an incoming high school senior living in Los Angeles. It was a turbulent time, a time when a series of unexpected, unforeseen, repetitive, yet endless events occurred. I grew up watching these events on television and living through these events. I lived through the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing, when 4 black girls were killed. I lived through the assassination events of Medgar Evers, President John F. Kennedy, Cheney, Goodman, and Swarner, Malcolm X, Viola Liuzzo, Martin Luther King Jr. himself, Robert Kennedy, and Fred Hampton. I lived through civil disturbances such as bombings and riots. I lived through the Vietnam War, where protests and outrage were frequent. Dr. King refers to this in his August 1967 speech. Although the times were tumultuous, my classmates and I were looking forward to our upcoming senior year. Our parents tried to shield us from fear and worry. They kept us busy by participating in dance and piano lessons, after-school, library, family, and church activities. But it was hard. We had positive people around us. We had music to uplift us. Motown, Aretha, James Brown, I see you smiling, Carole King, and James Taylor. We had the emerging Black arts movement, a movement that focused on literature, drama, the visual arts, as well as music. King called upon us to be creatively maladjusted, and we, our generation, answered the call. Today, our world is again in crisis. The triple-pronged sickness of which King spoke, racism, excessive materialism, and militarism, is not cured. King's 1967 speech resonates with us today, more than 50 years later, because the issues then are still the issues now. We are faced with similar uncertainties and new threats to our livelihood, multiple wars, disinformation, our rights to speech, our right to read, and book bans. Imagine book bans. 81-year-old Charlene Hunter Galt, journalist and civil rights icon, said, "I am very frustrated with the move to stifle so much of our history because it has helped people like me and so many. It helped us to realize our dreams, and when you take those things out of our history, you are attempting to remove our armor because our history is our armor." Gotta take a sip there. So where do we go from here? This is our call to action. We must choose love. Think of King's famous quote, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that." Let us begin to love ourselves, not selfishly, not egotistically, but love ourselves for who we really are. By changing our thinking and opinion of ourselves, we can change not only ourselves, but greatly benefit those around us. For we realize that every individual we meet is also a wonderful person worthy of love. Dr. King said, "I have decided to love. If you are seeking the highest good, I think you can find it through love." Let's choose love. We must choose courage. In the words of Dr. King, courage is an inner resolution to go forward despite obstacles. King was very clear that we should never be afraid to do the right thing, and I quote him. He said, "Society's punishments are small compared to the wounds we inflict on our souls when we look the other way." We must choose hope. We must accept finite disappointments, but never lose infinite hope. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke these words in Washington, D.C., addressed in February 1968, just 2 months before he was assassinated in Memphis. He spoke in 1967 of the dream deferred, of bewildering frustration and corroding bitterness. But he looked toward the bright tomorrows of justice. He chose hope, and so must we. We must choose faith. King said faith is taking the first step when you don't see the whole staircase. We are called to meet today's actions and challenges with love, courage, hope, and faith. In Rachel Maddow's latest book, titled Prequel, An American Fight Against Fascism, she mentions at the very end of her book, in fact, the fact is that, and I quote, librarians and archivists and teachers are the Fort Knox of memory, history, and truth. We need to defend them with everything we've got. In his Three Evils of Society speech, King said that a collision course was set as Congress attempts to legislate repression. This was true then, and it is true now. He said he had fought too long against injustice to segregate moral concerns. We are called to action against the injustices around us to ensure that memory, history, and truth is told, is shared, and is accessible to us, and especially to our young people. I will end with this thought-provoking, inspiring, challenging truth from Coretta Scott King. Mrs. King said, "Struggle is a never-ending process. Freedom is never really won. You earn it and win it in every generation." Friends, the fight for freedoms is never over. The fight for our freedoms is never over. We are called to action here and now. Let us work together across cultures and continents, and together we can meet the challenges. Together we can and will win. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm suffering without the coffee that you wanted and the tea that I needed this morning. Thank you, Claudette, for your inspiring words. My co-chair, LaJuan Pringle, is unable to be with us today, and I would ask that you keep him in your prayers. I want to thank Kevin Strader, Director of Office of Diversity, Literacy, and Outreach Services, Hillary Pearson, Program Manager, Accessibility Services of ADLOS, and April Shepard, Co-Coordinator of SRRT, for their invaluable assistance planning today's event. A special thank you to Beacon Press Incorporated, our guest speaker, David Delmar Sentes, and our call to action speaker, Dr. Claudette Malin. A heartfelt thanks to Sasha Marshall Orange and Virginia Jenny Moore for founding this event. And thank you. Thank you to OCLC for your continued support of this annual Martin Luther King celebration. As a program person at our library for over 36 years, I have to also pause and thank the technical crew who made this possible. Without them here, you couldn't even hear me today. Want to invite and welcome Lynn Silla-Pigney Conaway, OCLC Executive Director of Research, who's going to have comments this evening. Here she is.
Good morning. I appreciate all of you here. This is one of the most heartfelt events I have ever attended, and it's my honor to be up here today. As we've heard in Dr. Martin Luther King's Jr. 1967 speech, he identified racism, poverty, and militarism as the three evils of society. It's sobering to think that today, in 2024, we still have so much progress to make in these areas. Dr. King told the crowd, quote, "We are here because we believe, we hope, we pray that something new might emerge, new structures and new institutions, and a new life for mankind." I believe that libraries are ever transforming into more equitable new institutions. We develop new programs and collect new materials that connect with and support more diverse communities as we seek to be more inclusive. We invest in new technology and training that makes it possible to provide equal access to information to everyone. We focus on hiring staff who better represent the communities we serve. And we take new ideas into account, adjusting our approach even as our ideals remain steady and strong. More than almost any other profession, and I'm biased, we know that knowledge work and education is never done because the needs of our communities, of our teachers, of our students, researchers, and citizens shift and change over time, as do our definitions of what it means to provide equitable service to very different groups. And so we must imagine ourselves as new institutions almost every single day. I see this in the research that we do, how you are always asking questions, never satisfied, and never willing to let the restrictions and challenges of today limit the opportunities for tomorrow. Dr. King closed that 1967 speech by saying this, quote, "On some positions, cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right?" Unquote. The question, is it right, is often difficult, but it's one we'll always look to libraries to help educate and prepare us to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. This morning would not be complete without thanking all of the participants across ALA who made this possible. Each year it is my challenge to help to develop the theme, but also to put the script together that we work from. And that would not be workable at all if it had not been for all of you participating and hearing your voices across ALA. Thank you very much. We also want to thank ALA for sponsoring this event for 25 years and how important it is to our lives, our enrichment, and to what we do when we come to what I still call midwinter, but it's now called Live Learn X. So as we close this year's MLK program for 2024, another year, I want to ask everybody to join hands and let us sing, lift every voice and sing. We did lift our voices, I'm sorry. We shall overcome as we close out this celebration this morning. Please stand and join us. I'm not going to ask you to form a circle, but at each of the tables, please join your hands as one collective. As you see, each table has a broken link. That link represents the work that still has to be done for freedom, justice, and equality in this America. So here we go. We shall, go ahead, I can't sing, so we shall over. The Lord will see us through. In my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We're on to victory. We're on to victory. We're on to victory. My God, will do thee. In my heart, I do believe we shall overcome some. We'll walk hand in hand. Thank you so much, and I see that refreshments are just arriving. Thank you again, and we wish everybody safe travels on their way back home.
Before everyone departs, if I could have your attention one more time, my apologies. We do see that refreshments are arriving now. We still have about half an hour for you to join in fellowship, talk in community, and also the opportunity to get a book signed in the back table where Hillary is, by David as well. So if you would like to chat, get to know him a bit, and get a book signed, please feel free to hang around for a little bit longer. Thank you all so much for being here this morning. Okay. Also, can I have all BCALA members to come to the podium, please?